Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Woven Church today. Thank you to everyone who came out and survived the rain. There's really one massive announcement that I have to make. If you can't tell, the sanctuary is being stripped because it is getting new flooring, literally on Tuesday. So after this service, we're going to try to get this be finished early. There's going to be a group of people from Beaumont that's going to be here right at 4:30, and it's just moving this and this up on the stage. All the chairs, up half of them go into the fellowship hall, and half of them go on the stage. So anyone who can just stay and help, it'll go way quick with a few people. We're just going to take some sound stuff out. So therefore, when the flooring people come Tuesday, it's just all systems go. Going to happen pretty quickly. So that's really the major thing announcement-wise, outside of the fact that Alex and Matt are talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender today, which is super exciting. So just a special welcome to everyone, regardless of your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your views of the Bible, whether you think God is real or not. You're welcome here just as you are. And now, I can officially say this, our now new staff member, Daniel Grace, is going to lead us in the upfront.
It's funny that you say new staff member because I feel like I'm newly a staff member. That has not hit me yet, by the way. You said it. I've been told this many times today now, but I guess I'll believe it when I see it. But also, anyway, it'll hit me eventually. But yeah, so art. We're making art again. The one one instruction that I'll give to you is I don't want to see any of the white on the canvas. Like all of the blank spaces, I want those to be filled. That is your one assignment today with this canvas, if you would like to participate. So there'll be some similar music playing in the background. And yeah, go have fun. Be safe. Don't splatter the paint because it is acrylic and it will not wash out from your clothes. So, yeah. But let's make some art.
All good? All right. Welcome, everybody. Happy Sunday afternoon. So Alex and I are going to talk a little bit about dads and daddy issues when it comes to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, not our personal daddy
No.
issues. That's a different talk.
It's a different talk for a different time.
We don't have enough time to unpack all that.
And what we're going to focus on a little bit is the two kind of main fathers that show up in the story. Ozai, who is Prince Zuko's father, who is
A jerk.
a very bad person. He's a obvious.
He's the main villain.
Yeah, he's the main villain of the whole plot. But I think there's more to that, and as we'll kind of discuss, you'll see that there's some more subtleties that they put into that character to be like, hey, maybe these are symptoms that you might not think of being a bad dad, but they're put in there, and it's like, hey, this is a bad thing.
He's a bad dad, but with layers.
Yep. And then juxtapose that with Uncle Iroh. Now you might say, Matt, Uncle Iroh, that's not a dad, but he is.
He was at one point.
Yeah, he was a father to his son Liu Ten, who died in the War of Ba Sing Se. Sad day. And then really became the dad who stepped up for Zuko. Really, in Zuko's journey, Uncle Iroh is alongside him to find the Avatar, and kind of really just becomes his father as the story goes on.
But Iroh's not he doesn't necessarily share that goal of, oh, let's find the Avatar and bring him back to the evil dad. He's basically there to support Zuko and for no other reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kind of start off our discussion, because we're kind of going to basically talk about how Ozai approaches the situation and then how how Iroh approaches the same situation. So the first point we're going to dive into is the way each of them react when Zuko did something he shouldn't have or didn't fulfill a promise he made.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay. So season 3 of the series is probably my favorite season because it is Zuko's gets his redemption arc throughout the whole series, but that's where we really see it start to actually bear fruit and pay off. Not only because he actually joins the good guys, but because he quote unquote relapses first. And so he relapses by siding with Azula, and that ends up killing Aang the Avatar. Of course, we the characters know that he wasn't killed. We, the audience, know that he wasn't killed. Excuse me. But basically, at one point, Zuko realizes that he's messed up, that he shouldn't be in the Fire Nation doing all this stuff in line with his dad because it just isn't who he is. It doesn't compute with him, and he realizes that he can't be part of it anymore. And so there's this whole arc where they have the eclipse, and during the eclipse, firefighters.
I mean, they are.
Yeah. Firebenders can't bend, and so that's when he knows that his father, who again is the main villain, probably one of the most powerful firebenders in the entire show, that's when Zuko goes to tell his dad that he did not actually kill the Avatar. And to me, that not only is logistically a very smart move to tell the truth in the middle of an eclipse, I think is what his dad says. It's on paper, it's a very smart move, but it also shows that Zuko has learned from his mistakes, so to speak, because the first time that Zuko speaks out against his own father challenges him, who was 13 at the time, to an Agni Kai and gives him a gnarly scar across the face. So the second time that Zuko goes and tells his dad, hey, I think this is wrong, and also you're kind of a jerk, he does it during an eclipse when he knows his dad can't hurt him. And even when he knows his dad can't hurt him, he also brings his swords as a deterrent because Zuko approaches the situation with the attitude of someone going, if this person i.e. my father, is allowed to hurt me, he will absolutely not hesitate to do so. And that's really different with how he approaches Iroh later in the series.
Yeah, so there's a point where at the end of season 2, he kind of has a choice to take the good path of following his uncle Iroh and kind of figuring out what it means to be a better person, or join his sister Azula to try and take down the Avatar. And he ends up joining his sister, kind of still hoping that he can get his rightful place back at the throne, get his honor back. And he goes through that path and realizes it was the wrong path to take. He ends up leaving the Fire Nation again and joining Team Avatar. And all the while, he has no idea what happened to Iroh. So eventually, he finds out where Iroh was at and wants to reconcile. And something that my lovely wife pointed out is that the few times that Zuko has tried to apologize for something he did wrong, it has always ended in pain. The first time, right, he tries to apologize to his father burns him in the Agni Kai. Second time, he tries to apologize to Katara at one point. She attacks him instantly.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like that third time where he's reaching out to Iroh, somebody who matters so much to him, and is just like kind of laying it all out. And he's like, I'm so sorry, and almost braces for half a second at the end of his apology. And before he can even really finish, Iroh embraces him and is instantly crying and says, basically, I thought you had just lost your way. Like, I wasn't mad at you, I wasn't angry at you, I thought you would just lost your way, kind of this path that Iroh had been building for him. He felt like he had lost it, but luckily he came back to it, and I think is almost a modern day telling of the prodigal son in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
To throw in some biblical parallels in there.
In church?
How dare I?
What?
But yeah, so that's one way that the two fathers kind of differ, is that one is more accepting, one is more understanding of a child who has some faults, while the other one
will not hesitate to
Yeah.
hurt that child if it
Yeah.
benefits them. Or even if it doesn't benefit them and they're just mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of going off of that, the next point was Ozai uses his kids to prop himself up, to constantly make him the next, like the better person in the room because of something his kids accomplished, while Iroh wants to pass along to the next generation. So I'll speak a little bit on the Ozai part with this one. So Ozai is constantly wanting to gain the next position without really having to earn it. He doesn't earn about anything he does in this entire series. He uses Azula's prowess with firebending to make himself appear great before the current Fire Lord at that time, to say, hey, I should be the next Fire Lord, because at that time Iroh had pulled out of the war because his son had died. And Ozai is like, look at how great my children are, like, look how great Azula is. You should make me the next Fire Lord, instead of Iroh, who's clearly weakened from this battle and losing his son. And so he uses that time that Azula is trying to kind of show off, and then as soon as Zuko also enters the frame and wants to try and show off, they show Ozai's mouth go instantly into a frown, because he knows he's already disappointed in his son before his son even does anything. And it's going to ruin his reputation because of what his son is about ready to do. And so there's that part, and then when you get to season 3, when they're about ready to, it's the, what is the big, Sozin's Comet.
Yeah, yeah.
Sozin's comet is about ready to happen, so the firebenders are going to have this unnatural power to just like firebend anything and everything. It's going to be crazy. And Ozai finally gives Azula everything she wanted, and he's like, you are going to be the new Fire Lord. And she's like, great, but what about you? And he's like, I'm the Phoenix King now. Like, he creates a whole new position, like subjugate, like gives his daughter what she wants, but then subjugates her to still be lower than him, and creates a whole new position, something he didn't earn, something he didn't deserve. He's just like, hey, you've been here serving me, great. Here's everything you wanted, but guess what? I'm still better than you.
Yeah.
So constantly uses his kids to just prop himself up to be something that he hasn't earned or deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shoot, I forgot about that. It was Azula's idea. Yeah. Well, on the other hand, we have Iroh, who it's kind of complicated to combine this all into one talk because there's so much depth in all of these areas. But throughout the entire series, we kind of see Iroh. He's in a lot of ways the opposite of his brother Ozai because he's not necessarily, like, certainly we see Iroh a lot more than we see Ozai, but it's almost like Iroh purposely kind of puts himself in the background almost. He doesn't like try and seize the Avatar for his own glory. He doesn't do any of that. And at the end of season 1, where Zuko has this like accident and is presumed dead by the Fire Nation, who is currently attacking the Northern Water Tribe, Admiral Zhao, I remembered his name this time. We couldn't remember his name yesterday. Admiral Zhao talks to Iroh, and again, Iroh, who used to be this super big player in the Fire Nation, like heir to the throne, general working on conquering Ba Sing Se, which obviously didn't pan out. Admiral Zhao gives Iroh this chance to go from like the veteran on a ship full of outcasts who are trying to do an impossible task for a trivial thing like Zuko's honor, which it's not necessarily trivial. It's also too complex because Zuko never truly lost his honor, but that's not the point. Anyway, so he goes from being this veteran on a ship full of outcasts to a veteran on the ship of like the admiral who is about to conquer the Northern Water Tribe. And it's this big thing where if Iroh had even an ounce of his brother in him, he would have absolutely seized on that opportunity, like would have like tried to like control the destiny of others and all of that, would have like forgotten about Zuko and all of that. But Iroh doesn't do any of that. Iroh takes the chance to make sure that his surrogate son, Zuko, he makes sure that Zuko is able to get the supplies he needs. He makes sure that Zuko is not found by the Fire Nation. He uses all of that to make sure that his, again, surrogate son, Zuko, is okay and is able to do what he needs to do. And even then, throughout the rest of the series, like, Iroh, he's, like, later in, like, the end of season 2, like, he's a very powerful firebender. He's not, like, a pushover. He's not just, like, the goofy uncle figure. He's, like, very much like he could be a much bigger player if he wanted to be. But instead, he chooses to prop up Zuko, make sure that Zuko is learning from his mistakes and the journey that he's on. And even when he interacts with other members of the Avatar team, like when he teams up with Aang to go rescue Katara and Zuko from the the mines, the crystal cave under Ba Sing Se. He doesn't insert himself into the plot in a way that steals spotlight from people who need to learn and shape their own destinies. He's always trying to make sure that the characters are learning from their mistakes, even if he's supposed to be their quote-unquote enemy. There's so much that I could talk about here, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that too is that Zuko is kind of fighting back against Iroh every single step of the way. Like they kind of have a flashback when they first started this whole journey of searching through the air temples to try and find what happened to the next Avatar. And the flashback scene shows like Iroh already kind of being like, hey, we got this long journey ahead of us, you need to rest. Mm-hmm. And Zuko is like, no, I will not rest until I find the Avatar and restore my honor and all of this stuff. And it is definitely Ozai sent him on a wild goose chase. The Avatar hadn't been seen for over 100 years, or at 100 years, I guess, at that point, and basically just sent his son away so that he could continue to rule without his son being a part of whatever.
Maybe even hoping that his son would die in some far-off waste and save him the trouble of having to have a funeral for the son that he hated, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Great job, Ozai.
Father of the Year.
So the next piece that we are going to dive into is Ozai doesn't take the time to grieve or self-reflect where Iroh does. And kind of like what we were just talking about there, like if Zuko were to have died, I don't think Ozai would have cared at all. It would have been like the Emperor's New Groove when they have a funeral for Cusco. And it's just like solemn for a second. And he's like, that's it. And then everything changes over. Like that's probably what it would have been like.
That movie is so good. I love that movie. The poison for Cusco. The poison specifically made for Cusco. Cusco's poison.
But yeah, no, you're good. Ozai, he doesn't seem to be one who would take any time to weep or mourn over anybody. Like even when Iroh loses his son, it's so quick for him to just be like, well, clearly Iroh's weak because his son passed away, so he just pulled out of the war.
Yeah.
So like I wouldn't do that, and like he just I feel like he doesn't have that within him or that understanding in him almost of how to grieve.
Right. Whereas Iroh, like, we see so much of Iroh throughout the series, and it's also like seasons 2 and 3 I think are where the like Zuko and like Iroh I think really certainly they do shine at the end of season 1, but they're definitely in season 2 we see Iroh we see both flashbacks of Iroh and the current day Iroh, who the present day Iroh takes the time to even like however many years it's been later, like what, probably 5 years? It feels like it might have been a long time, but I think canonically it was probably like 5 years, right?
Something like that, yeah.
He takes the time to like stop everything that he's doing. He has a successful tea shop and everything like that at that point, I believe, right?
Yeah.
He takes the time to remember and mourn his son, even how many years it's been later. And we also see in flashbacks that Iroh, like when he's conquering Ba Sing Se, we see him in like a letter. He's like very like typical Fire Nation when he's writing it. He's like, "Oh, haha, we're gonna like conquer Ba Sing Se and be great in Fire Nation." But then after his son dies, like he drops out of the war. He takes the chance to mourn, to grieve, and then we see that he actually changes to stop being like, oh, Fire Nation, conquer everything, because he realizes the cost, which of course was his son and countless other sons that were killed during the war and all of that. And so if Iroh hadn't taken that chance to learn and grieve and mourn, if his son Lu Ten had died and Iroh hadn't stopped for a second, there's a possibility he might have conquered Ba Sing Se. But of course, he did stop and mourn, and he became a better person, and then everything worked out a lot better.
Yeah, and I'm even just thinking about it right now, that point that we see him grieving his son in Ba Sing Se, that's the first time he's been back since losing his son there.
Yeah.
And he sets kind of up, this scene happens where he sets up a little vigil for his son.
Leaves on the Vine.
Yeah, Leaves from the Vine plays, and everybody weeps. And it was actually at the same time when the voice actor for Iroh had passed away, and the episode was dedicated to him, which, I mean, fantastic work, Rep Mako.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything.
God bless.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about where kind of, I think, grief can lead us to better understanding people around us and better understanding how important life is. The next part here is where Iroh has genuine care for everybody he meets, including his quote-unquote foes. I'm glad you did the quote unquotes with
Yeah,
me.
it was good. Good
Um,
synchronization.
Yep. And particularly in this one, it's actually not as much a juxtaposition with Ozai because, right, Ozai is a bad guy. He's the leader. He doesn't care about his people, sure. But actually a juxtaposition with Tofstad.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go ahead and
Yes.
take that over.
I love Toph. She's one of my favorite characters. But I think when Toph is introduced, she's a character. She's like one of the main characters, but she's not introduced until season 2 as Aang's earthbending teacher. And Toph is a blind earthbender, which means that she's not like the stereotypical earthbender that we see in a lot of that season where it's like, ooh, I have big muscles and I'm gonna headbutt this giant boulder and like
I'm the boulder.
I'm the boulder. The boulder does not. I don't actually remember any of his lines, but like that. The boulder is no longer conflicted. Yeah, like all of that like stereotypical earthbender stuff where it's like very like macho, for lack of a better word, where like Toph is certainly like very rough around the edges, but like when we actually see her when she's not in the fighting ring, she's like walking around her parents who are super mega loaded, by the way, super rich. She's walking around the like place. She's kind of just not doing anything. She's like her parents very much infantilize her because she's blind. They think she can't do anything. There's this one thing that Toph's dad says where he's like, my daughter is blind. She is tiny and small and blind and helpless or something like that, which of course is not true because the second he says that, Toph's like, F you, and she goes and beats up the entire like troop of earthbenders who were beating the crap out of each other in the rest of the episode. And so we see that juxtaposed with Uncle Iroh, who I think later encounters Toph. I think it's still season 2, but it's when everyone's sleep deprived because they're being tracked or whatever, and so Toph gets mad, walks off on her own, and she ends up encountering Iroh in the wilderness. And Iroh, so first of all, the way she meets Iroh is she knocks him flat on his ass with earthbending because she thought that he was an enemy. And then the next scene that we see is Iroh and Toph having tea, and Toph thinks that Iroh thinks that she is small and helpless because that's the only experience she has with any sort of father figure. But then Iroh says, I poured your tea for no other reason than because I wanted to, not because I don't think that you couldn't do it. And it's very much this juxtaposition between Toph's dad, who thinks that she's like can't do anything just because she's blind, versus Iroh, who's like, okay, so you just knocked me down, and I think you're cool, but I'm still gonna be kind to you, not because I don't think that you can be, but because you need like someone to be kind to you, right? Anyway.
Yeah, it's good, and he also even says, well, not because I love you, but
right. I just met you. Yeah. Such a good character.
But yeah, like Iroh, in that moment, and I think I said this last week. He says, having tea with a fascinating stranger is one of life's greatest treasures. Like, that is really who he is. And then throughout the series, every single moment that he interacts with different people, he has care for each of them, especially in his Tale of Ba Sing Se. With the little kid who's crying, he sings a song to the little kid to help him stop crying.
And the guy who literally tries to rob him.
Yep, the guy who tries to rob him, and he's like, "You're gonna rob me with that stance," and like corrects the guy's stance. Then eventually just like sits down with him, starts having tea with him, and is like, you could probably do something better with your life than trying to rob from people.
Right.
Like that, and it's like. It happens kind of in a wipe, like you don't see what kind of leads up to that. There's kind of a transition that happens, but it's like it's so true to Iroh's character that it's like you don't have to justify how they got to this conversation. That's just who Iroh is.
Exactly, yeah.
So back to Ozai versus Iroh. Ozai hides and waits for his advantage. Iroh is constantly on the front lines.
Yeah.
So Ozai, kind of like I mentioned before, is like with using his kids to prop up himself. He doesn't earn anything that he does, and he's constantly in hiding. We don't really see him until season 2 when we get some of the flashbacks and stuff like that, and some of the stuff with Missoula and.
I don't think we even see his full face until like season 3, do we? Like mostly it's just like cut off below his nose. I think.
Yeah, it's mostly cut off, and then it's the flashbacks and stuff like that we see him a little bit. But Ozai constantly isn't the like. What's the word I'm looking for? He's just a dude. Like, they really portray him to be like this, this evil great villain and stuff like that. But at the same time, they show that like he's not that strong of a guy. Like, he's constantly hiding. He's never wanting to attack. When Iroh's on the front lines actually fighting the war at Ba Sing Se, he's sitting back in the war room trying to suck up to the current Fire Lord at the time so that he could get that position. He like challenges a child to an Agni Kai. Like, he's such a just normal person. They don't really like, yes, he's strong, but really his strength only comes when it's the day of Sozin's Comet. Like, that's when he decides to show off, is when it's like the firebenders are most powerful. And it's like, yeah, dude, you're most powerful at this time. Congratulations. Like, what do you want? An award for deciding to take the one time you have the biggest advantage you can?
Oh my God, you're so powerful right now. Should we tell everybody? Should we call Sozin?
And it's like he constantly is just man, I can't believe I can't think of the word, but he's really ultimately very like a weak-minded person.
Yeah. He's kind of a coward too.
Yeah, coward.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay,
He's
good.
a coward.
Yeah.
He's just a constant coward.
Yeah. I think also like going off that, like again, I just love Iroh so much. So Iroh, for most of the series, again, like even in flashbacks, he's on the front lines in Ba Sing Se actively fighting. But for most of the most of the series, we actually don't see Iroh necessarily fight that much, or at least not in the sense of like him being aggressive, unless it's proven that like said group of people is definitely planning on hurting him. Or Zuko. Most of the time, like even when he's captured, he just kind of chills until like, but it's not in like a cowardly way. I think it's more in a way of like he knows that he could win, but he chooses not to fight. Because at the end of season 2, we see Iroh like he does the Dragon of the West thing. He drinks really hot tea and then does like some like fire breathing. It's really cool. But it's one of the few times we actually see Iroh firebend. But it's like, the few times we do see him firebend, he's very proficient at it. He's very talented. He knows what he's doing, and he chooses not to fight. But even then, like he's still actively involved in the plot. Even if he's not fighting, he's actively like choosing to be part of it. Whereas Ozai, on the other hand, like I think isn't like the only time we actually see him fight like the season finale.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and he's really offensive for most of the fight, but then the second that Aang like goes into the Avatar state, he runs the hell away because he doesn't know how to fight defensively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like kind of going off of that, like Iroh teaches, the way Iroh teaches is he really understands the other nations, stuff like that. Even teaches a move to Zuko that he uses to defend against his father. Once the eclipse passes away, which Ozai's hiding during that, he's just like in his like little tunnel, hiding away from everybody to make sure he doesn't get caught. And Zuko finds him, and Zuko is giving him a mouthful and was kind of like, "Hey, you've been an awful person, and I shouldn't have come back here.
You suck."
Yeah. And then the minute the eclipse is kind of over and the sun is coming back, somehow underground, which I don't know how this works, but I think it's just the energy around, Ozai instantly is going to go into attack mode to attack his son.
Shocker.
Yeah, and uses lightning to try and attack his son, but Zuko takes it and redirects it away. I think it's in that moment he might have had a chance to almost direct it right back at Ozai, right?
Right, but he chose not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something like he learned from Uncle Iroh. And that's
Yeah.
something that Uncle Iro learned from studying a completely different nation, and learning from other people and learning from other generations, as
Yeah.
opposed to believing that
He's
the
the best.
firebenders were
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah. I love Uncle Iroh.
Yes. So highly recommend watching Avatar: The Last Airbender if you haven't. It's only 3 seasons, so it's not that long, and every single season, I mean, is great.
Banger after banger
Yeah.
after certified banger.
Yeah. And even the filler episodes, there's still something there.
Yeah, like the filler episodes, like I think technically the one where Iroh's like doing his like walking around Ba Sing Se and like grieving his son, that's technically a filler episode. Like it's still
One
like
of the best episodes in the entire series.
exactly, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll pass the mic on to Logan to wrap up our service.
Thank you, Matt and Alex. Just a reminder, here in like 10 minutes, people will be here, so we'll start tearing some things down. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. Due to everything that's going on after the service, we're not going to do Gather at the Table today, but go in peace. Bye.